Well, welcome to another episode of the podcast. This podcast will be in English. Due to our guest, we have in the studio Mr. David Stein, Smith County Chair of the Republican Party.
Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for taking some time to come visit us. And, well, we're going to discuss a little bit. I know politics, election year, and this is a hot topic, Mr. Stein.
Yeah, and David, please.
David, sorry, David.
Yeah, it makes me feel old. I am old, but it's okay.
David, okay, David.
Yeah, please.
We'll go with first names.
I'm good.
So tell us a little bit about who you are, and so we can get to know what do you do as chair.
Yeah. So one is I still think I'm a normal guy. I'm married for 38 years. My wife's name is Stella. I've got 3 daughters. They're all adult. One is 42, one is 34, the other is just turned 30, and I've got 3 grandsons. So I had 3 daughters, and now I've got 3 grandsons, and so they are 2.5, 1.5, and a half. So I'm their poppy, and it's probably the best job that I ever had in my life in doing that. But I've been a business guy. I mean, I've worked for medical device companies. I started my own commercial cleaning business 15 years ago, and that's really what I do for a job with various organizations. I volunteer in the community, but politically, I'm a party chairman, and really our job mostly is to get our party's candidate elected in the general election, but we're also the ones that are responsible for running the primary election. So when you vote to select candidates for a political party, whether Republican or Democrat, my job is to run that election. Now, we contract with the county to do that, but that's part of it. We run our county conventions. So when you see the big national conventions, that all rolls back to a state convention, rolls back to a county convention, to precinct convention. So that's really our responsibilities.
Before we get into the political, I know you said you had kids, grandkids, enjoying life, and my mom always says she enjoys and likes the grandkids better than the kids. Is that so?
I may or may not be
able to answer that question.
Yeah, no, so it would take a long time to really deeply answer it, but I really think that as a grandparent, you've gone through so much in your life that all of a sudden you're this hero again.
Yeah. And
somebody runs to the door when you come home, and there's that type of noise in the house. So you feel like Superman again.
Right.
And it's pretty cool.
And you can always give those kids back, right? Once you're tired, you got to go back to your mom's.
It is different. I do notice a difference that when we have 1 or 2 of the grandkids over, that or like the movie 4 Christmases with Vince Vaughn and mistletoe. Yeah, it is great.
I love kids. Kids are great. So maybe I'll even enjoy my grandkids even more.
It's fantastic.
So getting into this whole political stuff, we are in election year. It is a complicated topic for many, deciding what's the best option or what is a good option. We're not here necessarily. I'm not here to say vote Republican or vote Democrat, but there's a huge debate out there. There's a lot of separation, really. You're either Democrat and you support theirs, or you're Republican, or we can't get along, it seems like. I've seen people take friends off of Facebook because of political issues. Mm-hmm. Were you ever a Democrat? Never a Democrat.
My dad was a Democrat's Democrat. Both my parents voted Democrat. I always wanted the Republican to win, but I don't know why. I joke about this, but it might have been just to tick off my dad. I remember wanting Nixon to win. This was in '68. But the guy who got my attention politically, where it really meant something to me, it's like owning your faith for the first time. You might go to church as a kid, but there's a point when you become an adult where you own that faith for the first time. But me owning my political identity was Ronald Reagan in 1980. His message just resonated with me. The way that he spoke about what America is and what America can be, and not just for certain groups of people. the land of opportunity for everybody. And look, my family came here as immigrants back in the early 20th century, the early 1900s. And neither, I think, trying to think now, two of my grandparents came over right at 1900. One came over in the 1880s, and the other was here in the 1860s. And so I'm a first-generation Texan. You see people say politically all the time, well, I'm a sixth-generation Texan. I wish I was, but I'm a first-generation Texan. But
looking at you, the vast majority of people, and I'm not trying to be racist or anything, would probably say, well, you're just one more American with no issues on certain topics. You can't really connect with what my community would say would be the hot topic of debate, which is always in the political agenda, the immigration. And that's not so.
No, and they're, being a person of Jewish descent, it was different. I mean, we suffered persecution for a long time, and I'm not just talking about what happened in Europe and during World War II, but just the persecution and the coming over and the stereotypes and things like that. And the Jewish community has traditionally voted Democrat. And it's that perception about, well, the Democrats look out for the little guy. And okay, how? What look at this last one of the issues we just went through was the longshoreman strike that was just settled. And you look at what unions have done. There is a time where a union, you talk about somebody that stuck up for the little guy. Yes, the unions filled that role in the early 1900s, but they've become something totally different now. When you're bargaining for, well, we want a 4% raise every year is not good enough. We want a 6% raise. And I live in a world, I've always been a commission salesperson or as a business owner. Nobody guarantees me that I'm going to make more money this year than I did last year.
But yourself.
And even sometimes that's outside of your control.
Yeah.
You lose a client, something happens. We took a huge hit from policies in 2021 and 2022, and it was hard. It wasn't devastating, but it made a couple of years a lot harder than they needed to be.
So what has made it seem like the Republican Party is the enemy of the minority or the immigrant or the person coming to the United States for the first time, that first generation of immigrants? Because talking off the interview, we talked about how 1986, it was Ronald Reagan, a Republican, who did the amnesty that helped many of the people that are now residents or U.S. citizens in the United States and their families. Maybe some of the younger generations don't even remember that, but the parents sure remember it was Ronald Reagan, and it was a Republican. But so where did this bad rep, per se, with the immigrant community come from for the Republicans?
I think from a few places. One is I am going to blame the media for some of it. Today's media is not objective. I read an autobiography of Walter Cronkite, who was one of the most trusted journalists in history. He was the one on the famous interview after the Kennedy assassination where you see him with those big black rim glasses. He takes his glasses off and announces with tears in his eyes, it's 1:23, I think, p.m., President Kennedy has died. And it was a huge moment in history, but he was trusted to bring you what happened. And then you decided what you wanted to do with that information. In that autobiography at the end, and this was written 30 years ago, he was talking about his fear is that journalism has become nothing more than an opinion column of that person or the network who controls that interview, and not so much just the reporting of the information as you see that. So I think the media has been much more slanted. We have much fewer conservative news networks than we do what would be called the mainstream. And in particular, the same thing in the Hispanic community. You don't have many sources. I know the Texas Latino Conservatives is one group. I know that Hispanic Republicans of Texas is another group. But what information does the community get from a television station or from a news station that doesn't have some kind of a slant to it? So that is part of it. I also think the education of children has changed. When I went to school, reading, writing, and arithmetic, in bringing up my kids, I was hoping my kids would have my values. But what I wanted more than anything is I wanted to teach them how to form your values and how to discern what it is that you're seeing. And then you make your opinion. I don't want to tell you think like I think because that's what I want you to do. If a parent does that to a child, they're stunting that child's growth. I want them to learn how to critically think. I want them to look at something and say, I'll give you a great example. Ricky Martin. We've brought our kids up conservatively. I thought that Ricky Martin's music at this time in the late 1990s, I had nothing against his music other than I didn't think that an 8 or a 9-year-old young girl, that was the best influence for her. So I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to buy the CD, and you and I listen to it together. And whatever you decide, I'm okay with. Okay. And we did that. And she said, you know what, Daddy? I think I'll put it back. And I was glad she made that decision. But had she said to me, I want to keep it, I was ready to live up to my word and let her keep that. And so I think with children, they have to learn how to critically think. The other person I blame is I blame all of us, is that if you say something to me, it's not that I don't trust you. You seem like a real likable person, but we may look at things from a different viewpoint. So what was Ronald Reagan's philosophy? Trust but verify. Okay, I think you're telling me what you believe for reasons that are important to you, but I want to validate that. I want to verify. And I think we've taken people's opinions too literally just because this person is president of the United States or just because this person is a senator or this or anything or a chair of a political party. Listen to what I say and then see if you believe it. See if I am who I say I am, as the Bible says, right? Try the spirits. See if that person is genuine in what it is that they're saying. And somebody may say something incorrectly because they've said it incorrectly. It may not be that person is a bad person. And I think that's what we do. I disagree with you, so now you're my enemy. And I'm going to refer to Reagan a lot, but what did Reagan say? A person that disagrees with me 20% of the time is not 20% my enemy. They're 80% my friend. And we have forgotten.
I was going to say, it's hard for people to see that.
But I can't. So here, the other side of it, Juan, is my faith compels me to have a culture of love for humanity. Now, I may not like the person. I may not understand them. But if as a person of faith, which is important to me, I believe in eternity. I believe there's a good place to go, and I believe there's a not so good place to go. And if I wish an eternity of damnation on another human being, what does that say about my faith?
Right.
That's wrong. And I can't do that. I refuse to. I won't judge another person who does that, but that's not how I want to live my life.
How does the national agenda, per se, on the certain topics affect locally? And we've discussed the fact that not every Republican is the same, right? So even as Republicans, y'all may have different ideas or different views on certain things, or are we saying that all Republicans are the same, or how does that affect us locally?
Well, from a political standpoint, like I'll give you a difference. So in the senatorial race, you've got Ted Cruz versus Colin Allred. Allred promotes himself as kind of a moderate. I'm like you. I'm like everybody else. I mean, I'm a middle of the road kind of a guy. But his voting record is not that way. So he has voted lockstep with Democrats 100% of the time. And it's an interesting comparison between the parties, because the frustration for Republicans is we don't all vote together. I've heard somebody say that hurting Republicans is like hurting cats. And no, we don't all agree. And so, no, I'm not going to cave on this issue because this is what my district wants, and I've got to stay and I've got to vote this way. Anytime, look, you could go around a room and you're sitting there with 20 people, and if you say something and everybody says, yup, that's a great idea, somebody's not telling you the truth, because we shouldn't be afraid to challenge what somebody's idea is, even if it's the person at the top. I mean, one of the things you hear a lot with leadership now is if you are the leader, you want people's opinions, don't give yours first. Because if you give yours first, everybody else, nobody else wants to challenge you. So in other words, go around the room first and hear what everybody else has to say. So, but answering directly in your question, we have to get more than a soundbite. So why I love podcasts, because you get a conversation. Or if somebody said something that maybe they didn't mean in a particular way, you can question it. And you can say, you know what, let me correct that. This is what I really meant to say. When you're giving, when I do TV interviews or things like that, I may talk to somebody for 15 minutes and you've got 30 seconds that's on there. So it's very fast, and you need to get more than just a headline. What I would encourage people to do, it's how we got introduced.
Right.
Is someone called me and said, I want to know what you're doing to reach out to the Hispanic community. And I said, you and I need to have a cup of coffee. Let's talk. And so I think people need to go up to. And
now, did you know that person prior to that conversation?
No, I had no idea who he was.
Because that's who connected us, and I want to say thank you, because it gives us this opportunity to discuss. But I thought you were friends with Juan. I'll say it. He said it on his radio show. He's a Republican, and that's what he thinks is best for everyone, looking at the history, the record, and everything. So he's going to side with the Republican Party. But I thought maybe you knew each other.
No. I had no idea. And I look at, one of the things that I love about what President Trump does is he goes to areas you wouldn't think that he'd go to. But why wouldn't I want to go to an area where potentially somebody disagrees with me, because I have no possibility of winning that person over or understanding that person if I refuse to have an adult conversation with them? Tell me why you believe what you believe. I went to a friend of mine who is a pastor of an African-American church. I really wanted to know, why do you stay with the Democratic Party? There's so much that they believe now that has left your values. And it's good to have those kind of conversations. I never met Juan. I didn't know who he was. So what I do is he called me. Well, first thing I did is I looked him up. I Googled what's on social media. He's a realtor. Okay, so he does this. But then in our conversation, he was telling me about his story and how his dad started here and what they had to do to make ends meet. And it's a great classic entrepreneurial story of someone who started with not very much and built a life for the family. And now look at his family. Look how many generations are changed and affected just because of what his dad did to grow his family. So it's a great story.
Yeah, it's a great story, and the story of many people, honestly. We're in a country of opportunities. We're in a country where anything is really possible if we really set our mind. I think we're getting to where, unfortunately, and I'm going to say this and probably get in lots of trouble.
I'm good.
I feel like a lot of the times our community is starting to expect hand-me-downs, and we're losing those hardworking people. And maybe it's the newer generations who have lived in America and adapted, and don't know they don't know the struggles. So I feel like the younger generations, in a way, are just expecting the typical American hand-me-down of government
Yeah.
assistance and things like that. So I feel like we're losing a lot of our core values, like you say, of Juan and his family and how they worked so hard to have what they have. And I think that's probably like that with your immigrant community. You know, you had to work twice as hard. Your family had to work twice as hard to really adapt to this country. It may have been a little easier for you, and it's probably a whole lot easier for your children.
Oh.
You know, but slowly those have to really learn and remember where we
Right.
came from.
But, so Thomas Jefferson said, a government that is big enough to give you everything you need is also big enough to take away everything you have.
And
That's a dangerous statement. But see, my story, so my grandmother comes over from Romania, doesn't speak a lick of English. They couldn't understand what she was saying at Ellis Island, so the name they gave her was not her name, but that's the name that was on that she stuck with her whole life. But she wound up going to college, you know, as a young 18-year-old, which was unheard of for women in this would have been like in 1914, 1915. She goes to college, she gets educated. Are you kidding me? A woman going to college, and then an immigrant woman going to college? And they did very well. My grandfather was in business. They owned a clothing store in New York City. They did extremely well, and then lost everything in a devastating hurricane. Everything was completely wiped out. So my dad then waits tables part-time. He did radio part-time in school. He got a scholarship to go to college, but he had to work to go to college. So he had to bust his tail for everything. And then he built a life for us. But then I started out, I had the benefit of a college education, but nobody made me open my books and study. And then the first job I had was in commission sales. So you eat what you kill. So if you don't get out and work, I was always willing to work harder than somebody else. I never thought I was better than people. I actually thought most people were better than me. So I always felt like I had to work harder than everyone else because I had to prove myself. And I still feel that today, is that I've arrived nowhere. Every time I go in for a new client, I have to prove myself to that client that we're a good company, that we're going to be honest, that we're going to do well for them. And when you lose that edge as an individual, you've given power to somebody else to control your future and your destiny. And I never want to do that. I always want to have the opportunity to do better. And government regulation hinders that. I'm doing this and I'm doing this successfully. So, for example, when you use the term the handout, so when the stimulus packages came out, I run a janitorial business, cleaning business. We've always paid better than the average for that type of work. We've always treated our employees, I don't just say really well, we'll help them connect with resources that can help them personally. Because if all they do is clean for me, and I don't help them get better, then I've failed as an employer. I need to help those employees be better people with that. But when people receive the stimulus money, I had employees, okay, fine, I don't need to work anymore.
Right.
And then when they realized they didn't qualify for it and wanted to come back, I couldn't hire them back. So I'm in a difficult situation, and now I've got people applying for work who really don't qualify, and I've got customers depending upon me. So we lost a number of clients because they got frustrated because we couldn't staff the jobs, but also because people didn't want to take a job. I mean, sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do. When I started a new job, we were struggling financially. Two of my kids were really young. I worked all day, came home and ate dinner, went to sleep, woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and threw a paper out. I was 32 years old. Here I am, a college-educated guy, with a professional job, and now I'm getting up at night and doing this. Yeah, that's what it took to take care of my family. And what you've talked about in the expectation, I think we've lost a lot of that in society. But it, again, is one of the reasons I identify on the Republican side. I don't want you to give me anything except an opportunity. That's all I want. Give me a chance to run my business. Don't close my business. Don't put regulations on me that make it harder for me to do what I do. Don't make me work so hard to prove to you, that I'm honest and that I'm doing my business well. So it's those kind of things, the overregulation, and there's so many other things which it is that we can get to, but it comes down to this core value, this thing of you've got to want better for people around you. I want my kids to do better than I have done, and I don't know with what's happening how they're going to do that. I'll give you another one, and I'm sorry if I'm talking too long on this, but housing. Okay, what's caused the housing crisis? So in Tyler, and our friend Juan can tell us a lot more about this, but when I bought my house back in 1994, we probably had about a 30% increase in the value of that house over 20 years. Well, through policies in places like California and Oregon and Washington and Colorado, and they sell their moderately sized house for $600,000, and then you come to a place like Tyler, Texas, $600,000 buys you a lot of house. As a matter of fact, you can buy a house for $300,000 and keep the other $300,000, in your pocket for an investment. So those policies drove people out of their homes. Those people came and bought homes here for overvalue. When I first moved here to Tyler, you didn't pay more than asking price for a house. Nobody did. And now you're bidding above that for houses? It's insane. And so, and my house has escalated far beyond that. But you know what that does for me? It doesn't make it easier for me to make my house payment. House payment's still the same. My income hasn't increased exponentially. That's the same. You know what's gone up? It's the taxes.
Yep.
And the taxes have gone up because of the value. So this is an area where governmental policies affect local pocketbooks.
So we have to pay attention very closely.
All the way around, and not just nationally. And we have great people locally. We have great city council members. We've got a good mayor. We've got county commissioners. These are the people, and don't forget the school board people. These are the people that create the taxing situations that we need to pay close to. And you can go meet these folks. We're fortunate that they're accessible to us. But what happens is that people see something on the national news, and then they take it out on the local people. Well, you people are all the same, and most of these are they're volunteers. The city councilmen, they don't get paid. County commissioners are the only one that get paid, but you really can't work a full-time job and be a county commissioner. So you have to be in a certain situation to be able to do that. But,
right.
Pay attention locally, your city council, your school board. Tyler's different because we have this thing called community. And I think that's a deal breaker for a lot of people, that in a positive way. Anyhow.
Would you go to say the local elections should be a little more important to the local community? Or maybe we should take them a little more serious than we do, because we take the national elections, presidential elections, to heart. But we don't really go out to vote locally. We don't focus on that, because that's what really affects us, every day.
And we know these people because we see them on the news. It's one of the reasons that we pass out. I showed you before our slate card, why I like to have pictures. But people will go to the polls, and they might vote on the Republican side, vote for Donald Trump, vote for Ted Cruz, and maybe Nathaniel Moran, who is our U.S. congressman, and then go home. And it's like, wait a minute, we have all of these local people that you need to vote for. There's 2 county commissioners on the ballot. There's 4 constables on the ballot. I mean, the constables are the people that have to present an eviction notice. Well, you probably should get to know who that constable is in your neighborhood. Not that it curries you any favor, but it just makes you more knowledgeable about the process. When I first got involved in county government, I was a county commissioner back in 05 and 06. I had no idea what a county commissioner did. Didn't even know the position existed. A friend of mine was the county judge, went and spoke with her and just, hey, educate me.
I'm going to ask you a question. I know that Ted Cruz has been, you either love Ted Cruz or you hate Ted Cruz here in Texas. That's just kind of the picture that has been given. You either love him or you hate him. And I guess maybe that's a lot of the times in politics and many other things, you don't have a middle ground. You just love or hate. That's just the way we are. If there was a reason why you would not vote for Ted Cruz, would there be any reasons why you wouldn't vote for Ted?
No. I mean, one is I don't vote on personality.
Okay.
So I look at what Senator Cruz has done. If you watch most of the political ads, what you will hear is Ted Cruz doesn't stand up for Texas, right? All he cares about is himself. And then what is it you see portrayed?
The flight to Cancun,
right?
Flight
to Cancun. So can I give you a quick backstory on it?
Yes.
His wife, Heidi, who is a very successful financial advisor, they knew their electricity was out. She found a deal. She found a deal in Cancun that their family could go to. So Senator Cruz takes them to Cancun that day. He's on the phone for the majority of the time, making sure that he's available to do whatever backup he needs for resources. And he was back in Texas the next day. So you don't hear that part. The other part, which people need to get educated on, is there is little for him to do. It's a state issue. It's the governor. It's the state legislature. It's ERCOT's responsibility. So there really is nothing that a senator can do other than when the time comes to authorize federal funds through FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Association. So that would be where he would come in. But the optics were awful, and he's acknowledged that. He has said, you know what, it looked awful, and I get that. But let's go to the other side. One is he is a staunch pro-life advocate, and I support that. He wants to solve the immigration situation. We have got to do something about our immigration system, about making it easier for people to get in and become citizens. But the border has got to be closed. Most of the folks in the Hispanic, Latino community that I talk with don't want the border wide open either. It's not good for the country. It sounds nice, it seems fair, but it's a disaster from an economic, from healthcare, and the whole bit. He has done things, for example, he's been instrumental in helping get Supreme Court justices approved. That was a huge win, I think, for the nation. There are things that they have to do when we're improving roadways. So if you want to expand your interstates, that requires senatorial assistance in order to be able to do that. So he provided a pathway to get, I think it was I-27 and I-14, which are further south from us, to get those approved. And they get funding to support the expansion of a port. So think about for a moment, what does that mean? Okay, great, we got more roads and we got more ports. What does it mean? Well, here's what it means. It means we have more access of goods and product that can move back and forth across Texas. When there is more access for goods and products, business owners realize they can transport their goods much easier. When they can do that much easier, it allows them to grow their companies and create additional jobs to support that. So when people bash Ronald Reagan's trickle down, but that's what trickle down is that when you can create additional opportunity for a business owner. When I started my company, it was me and my wife out of my house. Okay, well, the opportunity that I've had to be able to grow the business, we provide part-time supplemental income to 140 people that need a company that they can trust to do that. That's a pretty good thing when you don't have the government on your back creating regulations. So there are a number of things that happen that aren't flashy. that don't get people's attention, and that's why political ads, I despise them. I really do, and from all sides, because all it does is try to create something that's emotional, in which you're really not getting the detail of the job that somebody like a Senator Cruz has done. This guy, most teenagers were outside playing ball. He was memorizing the Constitution at 12 years old. That's not normal, but that's how much he loved and appreciated this country. So that's my opinion. Whether people agree with it or not, I can't.
Right. And I think the media has done a great job on showing that image of him leaving, and that's what's really sold. Now, I'm not here to defend or to say I agree, but I think just like my family brought me to the United States for a better future, I think we personally will always look out for the best interest, safety financially, and all of the above of our family. So would anyone else watching or listening to this podcast do the opposite that Ted Cruz did if he had the opportunity to take his wife and his kids to a place with electricity and be warm? I don't think anyone would say, like, no, I'm just going to let my family freeze if we had the ability, to do it. But obviously that's up to each one.
Right, but now, you also get, but how do you help your common person? So my house, I was fortunate during Snowmageddon.
Yeah, I don't think we lost much power here in East Texas.
We lost
some
a
people
lot.
did. But.
Yeah, we lost. We're in between two healthcare centers, so apparently we're on the holy grail of grids or whatever. But we didn't. But we offered our home to people. Look, if you need a place to stay, we're open. Okay, I mean, my wife and I are the only ones in the house. It's the same house we raise the kids, so there's no sense in having 3 bedrooms go unused without heat. But that's what communities do. But I appreciate you saying that, because when you think about it from a family standpoint, won't you try to do something for your family that you can?
Well, I think that's the reason immigrants come to the United States, right? Legal or illegally. I mean, a lot of people don't agree, and they're always saying, well, if everyone would come here legally, well, we know the immigration process is very complicated, and that we can't change immediately. It's broken. But that's the same reason why immigrants come to the United States illegally, risking their life, right, for a better future.
And there are a lot. It's similar to what you see over in the Middle East when, they're using kids as human shields. They are using women, they're using children, and this is a whole nother topic. But the sex trafficking that's going on it's the most ungodly thing that you could ever think of. And it's rampant through East Texas, much more than a lot of people think. You go to an organization like CASA, even before this exploded, 1 in 4 kids in Smith County is a victim. And that would shock you to think that. So you look around a table and there's 4 kids, there's a chance that one of them is suffering some kind of abuse for that. And it's fortunate that we have places like Children's Advocacy that they can go to, or the Crisis Center, and I've been involved with a lot of these through the nonprofit work. When you see what a community does, there are so many resources that we have in Smith County that are here to provide that kind of help, that a lot of people are expecting the federal government to wave a magic wand and provide. Bethesda Health Clinic. So many people don't know about Bethesda. How many folks listening to this podcast may be without health insurance because they're working, but it's too expensive, the benefits, to afford it? Or, they're working, they have none, or they have bad. Well, Bethesda is a health clinic that provides health care for the working underinsured and working uninsured. You've got to have a job, but if you can show them that you've got the job, you've got a full-time income, you're trying to make ends meet, but the healthcare benefits don't work, they're there for you. One of my employees had a blood issue. She was paying $400 a month. It was killing her. Bethesda, she went to Bethesda, and it cost her $40 a month. There are those resources available for people. Literacy Council, helping people learn to read English as a second language, or getting a GED. That's an economic booster. You get your GED, you now have that diploma. You can then go on to places like TJC, who for minimal cost, you can continue your education. So there's all kinds of opportunities. And as a Republican, that's what I believe. Let's let the communities do what they do best. I don't want the federal government pointing me and saying, you will do this or you won't do that.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the immigration topic, which in our community is always such a big debate. And we'll talk kind of locally, and then we'll head on over to the national level of it. You obviously come from a background of immigrants. Mm-hmm. You know, you've lived, you know, maybe through the generations you've seen, you've heard the stories, but not many people have. So a lot of the people think the Republicans, you know, which have a certain demographic, you know, they always say it's just a certain demographic of people that are Republicans that don't understand. Do you think that's really the case? People just don't understand what the immigration is? Or are Republicans, let's say, racist? Are they all against the immigration? Or what is the stand there?
So I'll tell you what I've told my wife, not on this issue, is that I don't say never and I never say always, because one size doesn't fit all. There are a lot of these problems. If you ask me, what would you do to fix the immigration system? My honest answer is I have no idea. I don't know. I don't have the answers. And I think we're afraid to admit that we've got an enormous problem that we just don't know how to fix. I think the first problem is we have got to close the border. Every other country in the world has closed borders, I think, if not the vast majority. Why are we the only ones who do that? And there is a ripple effect of doing that. So if you said, and if I said I have a 4-bedroom house and there's a family that is homeless and I'm going to take them in to my home, I would take that on, that I am making that decision with my own home, my own resources, that I want to do this for another family. That is my individual decision that's within my sphere to be able to do. I'm not asking anybody else to help. I'm not asking you to chip in because I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I want to do that. The problem we have is these folks that are coming over, you know, illegally, some for very good reasons, some for not so good reasons. But the issue is there is a cost to doing that. And it's just like the work that I do within the nonprofit organization. The people we support are wonderful people. They all have huge hearts, great causes, honorable, you know, mission statements all the way through. But if we don't have the money to support what it is that they're doing, you can't support it. It's just not sustainable. And so that's one of the issues with, as humane as it seems to let everybody come in, the problem is you're giving folks access to health care, access to education, you know, monthly stipends. Meanwhile, we've got our own citizens that are homeless on the street. We've got our own, you know, armed forces veterans who don't have the care that they need. And I have a problem with that. I just think that we have to take care of those that are here first. And it's like spending money on your credit card that you don't have. There comes a point where you got to say, look, I just can't anymore. We've taken on debt. We talk about the national debt. I remember an old joke on, I think it was David Letterman, where when the debt was $4 trillion, he said, just go down to the horse track and bet $1 million on a 4-to-1. You know, if you win, the debt's paid off. If you lose, it's only another $1 trillion. Well, now we added $4 trillion of debt under President Obama, $8 trillion under President Trump, 45, and now $12 trillion of debt under President Biden. So we've talked $24 trillion. We have far more than doubled our national debt in the last Well, since 2008. I mean, it's not sustainable. And we're loaning money to people who don't think favorably of us. You know, you see a lot of the old movies where you loan money to a loan shark or somebody who controls a neighborhood and you need to pay me to protect you. We're putting ourselves in that situation. I mean, the Chinese government does not love America the way that all of us here love America. It's a problem that eventually is going to crash.
So this would be the same thing, saying, would you leave your kids at home without food and shelter to feed someone else?
No. Well, say that again. Would I leave my kids at home?
It's the same question. I mean, we're like you say, we're having to help all these outsiders per se, and not taking care of our own. It'd be the same thing if we personally didn't feed our family because we're busy feeding other people.
Right. Well, it's the age-old thing about, one of the toughest people to be is a pastor's kid.
Yeah.
Because the dad or the mom is always out with other people. Or look, my family experiences some of that too. I want to spend time with Poppy. I'm sorry, honey, Poppy's got an event tonight. I mean, that's part of the price that you pay. But you have to try to balance that out. But there comes a point where it's like when somebody says to me, well, David, can you do this? And it's like, I can't. It's not that I don't want to. It's not that I don't think that what you're doing is unimportant. It is. I just can't. I don't have anything left. And so if I have no money left, I mean, those of us, we like to be philanthropic. We like, I think it's a calling that if you are blessed in your business, you should turn that around and bless other people. If you keep it on all for yourself, that's a problem. But I'm not. There are people who can write $1 million checks, think nothing of it. I'm not one of those people. I'd like to be. But you can only do so certain much. And if this border continues to be so porous, let's stop and figure out where we are. It's like water coming into your home. I mean, you got water coming into your home. You can take a bucket and bail out. But if you're not stopping the water from coming into your home, you're not solving the problem.
Now, obviously, a lot of the people watching or seeing, and if they have an immigrant background or anything, I mean, they have to realize too that this situation could affect everyone in general, not just the naturalized born citizens, the whites. Like, a lot of people like to put race into the situation. Well, just because you're white, you don't understand what an immigrant is. But the uncontrolled immigration has an effect on everyone.
Well, correct, because it affects our taxes. It bloats the federal government when you're providing things like health care. Even like I think Social Security. I hear people say, "Well, I think Social Security is at risk." I mean, that is a protected fund, but they have borrowed from Social Security at time, and that you can't do that. But there are a lot of these other systems, and Social Security is one. Why are we doing the same thing we've always done? President George Bush, 43, George W. Bush, proposed doing something different with Social Security, and people went nuts, thinking he was crazy. You look at what he proposed, had we put that in place 20 years ago, a lot of people would have been a lot better off. But, and again, I say, I don't know what the ultimate fix is. I mean, what do you do with everybody that is here now? I mean, the two things I'd like to see first off is I'd like to see, one is the border closed. The second thing is I would like us to identify in the next segment who are the bad people that have come in. I mean, there's people that have come into this country intending to do our country and people harm. And we've got to identify those folks as fast as possible and send them back, incarcerate them. That's the first deportation that should absolutely happen, and get those people out of the country. What you do from there, I really don't know. You've got a lot of I know it's easy to say, well, deport everybody. It's an easier statement than it is an action.
Right.
And in order to do that, and I understand the ramifications of what that sounds like, is you finally gotten somebody smuggled into the country and now you're with them and you don't want to say goodbye to them. But if they're draining the system, if they're not contributing, if they're here illegally, I mean, if a law is broken.
Now, they said there's 11.7 million illegal or undocumented immigrants in the country. Now,
That we think,
because we can't account for it. Now, there's two things I want to kind of ask you about on. There's a lot of people that say those 11.7 million contribute one way or another, to taxes, to federal stuff that they can never recover because of lack of Social Security numbers. And a lot of them funds just stay there. Do you think that could be a reason why there's another extra reason not to legalize people?
One is, I don't know that they're all contributing to the system. And I'll tell you, my industry in particular. So we inherited a piece of business, and the individual who was working for the former company was really well liked by the company whose facility she was providing services. And they asked me, would you please keep her? Mm-hmm. And I said, well, look, let's talk to her. Let's interview her. Well, what I found is she wasn't here legally. And what I found is they were not paying her a proper wage. And they were taking advantage of her, which really bothered me. They were paying her the equivalent of $6 an hour. They were paying her cash under the table. They were not they were not recording it, and if they ever get audited, yeah, it's going to be a problem.
Right.
But the federal government is not going after small cleaning companies. They're not looking for things like that, and a lot of people are unfairly treated and abused by people who take advantage of them that way. So I don't know that all that money goes to pay into the particular system. It wouldn't be a financial reason to keep people out. I wouldn't see that because I don't think it's a significant amount enough that it would come to that. But look at you look at your construction industries. There's a lot of work that's done by folks who are not here with proper documentation. I've also heard the argument that if they were not here, we couldn't build as much as we're building as fast enough. So it's a multifaceted problem. That's why I say I don't want to pretend to anybody listening to this or watching this that I've got an answer, because I don't. A lot of people out there are much smarter than I am that need to try to figure this out.
And it's for sure a hot topic and a hard topic, I think, to address overall.
But just like you and I are talking about, these are the kind of conversations that need to happen, not this kind of a conversation where, you people are all like that, or you people are all like that, or these people. So we just can't solve problems that way if
Right.
we really want to solve problems.
And there's a lot of things I think that need to be addressed in the immigration thing. I think I agree with you. And like I said, if there's a podcast I'd get in trouble, this is probably one, because, sometimes you're not Mexican enough and you're not white enough, But I agree with you. I don't think the country can sustain unlimited amount of immigration. And that's for me and for my future generations, for my kids that are already here, but I think that there's got to be some kind of legal way, because there's a lot of people who don't want to come to the United States and live forever. They want to come and work. And I think those are the people
Correct.
that could help us build those bridges, build the roads, and then go back.
Right.
But if they don't have a legal way, it makes it so much harder to keep the bad guys. Now, going back into the security aspect of it a little bit, I know a lot of the times we are pointed at towards, like President Trump in the first, time. He pointed at all the immigrants as the rapists, the killers, and all the above. Now, in some of the big situations in America, like 9/11, it was not the Latino community that had anything to do with one of the worst scenarios of terrorism in the United States. Now, those
Right.
people were legal in the United States. So how do we solve that too? I mean, because we can't judge and hold something against them because of their faith or their religion, right? So how do we protect America in that aspect?
Well, one of the things that the Hispanic Latino community needs to hear is, and everybody is aware of this, is that the immigration is not a problem of the Latino Hispanic community only. The number of Chinese who have come through, there's countries from all over, and they're coming in through Mexico. We have another border on top of us to the north. They're not coming through that. They're coming more through the Mexico border. So
is that what affects that belief of the immigration and against, let's say, the Mexican people?
It could be part of it,
because we're counting everyone who uses that Mexican border.
It is there, but there's also, everybody thinks that everyone else is picking on us. So I'll give you a person. You've been open to these, so I'll share this. It's a personal story. So my background is Jewish. We talked about it. Became a born-again Christian in 1981, and I follow the Christian faith. But I don't begrudge my Jewish roots. It's part of who I am. So there was a deal I was working on in my business that I didn't get. My mother happened to be visiting with us, and this is probably late 2010, something like that. And she said, "Well, do you think it's because you're Jewish?" And I thought, what? I mean, because I've never once in Tyler experienced any persecution because of a Jewish last name or anything like that. But just the mindset of, no, you didn't get this because you're Jewish. And I get outsold. I might get beat out for a deal, but I'm not going to blame it on somebody else. I don't think that way. And I think that people in the Hispanic Latino community shouldn't take on the burden as if they think the Republicans are pointing a finger and saying, you're the ones. It's much more than that. Now, we know the cartels are controlling a lot and sending a lot of people in here. That is a problem. I don't care where you're from. If you're coming in here with intent to do harm, kill, sex traffic, no, I don't want that person in as part of that country. But I don't look at the problem of immigration as a single source problem. And I don't think, if they're listening to all of the right sources, I don't think people are going to hear that language.
Right. Then we go to the federal level, and obviously I think Trump has, made some ruckus, and I think some people take it to heart. Would there be a reason why you would not vote Republican on the national level for Donald Trump?
It's values. So there was a great podcast I listened to, and I've been frustrated because I've really been trying to get churches involved in the elections. And you've heard people say, if the people of faith would all vote, we wouldn't lose any election. And I think that people need to look at the values. I'm not voting for Trump. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to make up for any character deficiency. He is who he is. He, like me, grew up in New York. I get it. If he's arrogant, well, he is arrogant. Okay, he does have a little track record of success to back it up. This guy single-handedly overthrew the entire United States government, coming on first, winning the Republican primary, and then winning the presidency in 2016. Nobody gave him a chance. It's like the classic underdog story, but we don't look at it like that. But who is the candidate, going back to this podcast, which candidate is going to stand up for life more? Which candidate is going to stand up, more for securing our borders and having a proper immigration system? Which candidate is more likely to support policies that will make our cities and counties safer? Which candidate is going to stand up for policies that would be geared more towards, let's make our school systems safe. Let's make sure that they have the proper resources, but let's make sure they focus on what a school is for. And as a lot of people like to say, it's for education, not indoctrination. If you tell me going to school, Republican bad, Democrat good, and you never teach me how to read or write or do math, you've crippled me for life. And schools that are doing that, fortunately, we don't suffer from that in Smith County. We've got great school systems here. Not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But the fact is, if we don't focus on the core functions of what needs to happen in the education system, in the government system, what is a county government supposed to do? Run an efficient judiciary system, provide proper law enforcement, and fix roads. Those are some of the main functions of a county government. We've gotten way too involved in a lot of these other issues, and it's distracted us from getting away from the core focus is. And from a spiritual concept, what does the spiritual adversary try to do, right? Comes in, Juan, you don't know about this guy. This guy's, he's pretty messed up. And then it says to me, David, I don't know if you can trust this guy. There's something wrong with this guy. And so you and I start looking at each other, and all of a sudden the adversary's gone, and you and I are at odds with each other, and nothing happened. It's the problem of these thoughts that are implanted to each of us that I'm good, everybody else is bad, and it's, again, getting off, but that's a problem.
So I want to ask you, because I know we're running out of time.
Yeah.
I mean, we can sit here and talk forever.
Listen, I appreciate
and I would love for you to come back.
Okay.
Because we have so much to talk about. But I'm going to
game.
Put it this way. As an immigrant, because I'll say an immigrant, because your family comes from, so you've experienced that. Mm-hmm. As a believer, as a businessman, what are the things that we should be looking at during the election when we go cast a vote that maybe people are ignoring? What are the things you are looking at to fulfill those needs personally?
So I would go to the things that affect every single one of us.
Okay.
I am unashamedly pro-life.
Okay.
But I understand that doesn't affect every one of us. So what percentage of the folks that are watching us right now buy groceries? I'm going to guess 100% of them.
Right.
The problem that has been created, so when you look at why have our prices gone up, everything is affected by energy. And you go back to the basic economic principles, the first thing you'll hear is supply and demand, right? When supply is low, the demand is high because you have more people trying to compete for less product. So what happens? The price of the product goes up. So, and then the inverse. So I need somebody who is going to demonstrate that they can control the economy and they can pass policies which will be received properly by business, not to force their prices up. Energy is another piece of it, that the transportation, because groceries have to be driven from one place to another. Okay. Oil and gas affects that because you have to transport those things. So who's going to be in the best position to control the economy? The second thing is who is going to be more in control of local safety? Which party is going to promote policies where I don't want a brutal police force? I don't want people to abuse citizens. I don't want people to profile citizens. I don't want unfair search and seizures. But what I do want is I want the bad guys put away and the bad gals. I don't want police officers going out feeling like they are handcuffed because they're afraid of how what they're doing is going to get perceived. There are bad police officers out there. That is few and far between. But yet, that's what we see. So economic security, local safety is an enormous part of it. And then from a regulatory standpoint, is that who is going to be in position to help you start up a new business if you choose to do that? Because when you start a new business, you can create additional wealth and economic opportunity that grows and then provides more jobs for folks. The last thing is not a federal issue, but it is a local issue, is that we have got to have a better trained workforce, is that many people are working less with their hands and more in service industries or more with computer skills. We have got to, in our education system, somehow help them from a discipline standpoint to get students educated. No, you may never make $1 million. I've never made $1 million. Okay, and I'd like to say I will one day, but the odds are getting closer against it. But I want economic opportunity for business owners. And what I have seen when you look at people associated with the Hispanic Professionals Association of Tyler or with the Hispanic Business Alliance, it's all about opportunity. It's all about entrepreneurial shift. Let's help people start business and use their God-given talents to create more opportunities for their family.
And you firmly believe that that would be more a Republican Party?
Not even close on that radar scale. Not even close. When I look at what Vice President Harris has done, and it's for another time, but hopefully when you've asked me a question, I have given you answers as best that I have known them. I hope that I haven't appeared to dodge a question or try to make something up. When I watch candidate Harris, I am appalled that she gives answers that she does, that the American people are not finding out who it is that she has. I have a plan. Great. What is it? President Biden said he had a plan for COVID when he ran as a candidate. I have a plan. He has nothing. What plan did the president have? He didn't have any plan. And so I'm 100% convinced, which is why I continue my role as Republican Party chair, but also why I will support every single Republican down ballot.
Okay. David, it's awesome talking to you and
you.
Getting to know you a little more.
Thanks for the time.
Getting to know what you do, and obviously maybe clearing up a little bit on some of the issues and what the Republicans, I think, just like anything, we think about the Democratic Party, we think about the Republicans, and we have a stereotype of people and the way they believe, or maybe they're against us, and usually our community just kind of feels like that. The Republicans are against immigrants, the Democrats support them, and that's that. That's all they look at.
Do you associate with people in your life that are perfect according to you, or you agree with on every single issue?
Yeah, we don't agree.
Nobody has it.
Nobody agrees.
So sometimes we have to make, what is it they say, that perfect is the enemy of great? So you can be great without being perfect. And I think a lot of people have left the Democratic Party in the past. If you look at the shift in Texas, the famous, again, Ronald Reagan, but other people have said it, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me. This party has become far too radical for most mainstream Democrats. What do we want? We want opportunities for our family. We want safe streets. We want safe schools. We want limited government so we can live our lives to the best of our abilities. If the government gets in the way of that, that's a problem.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
David, I appreciate your
My
time.
pleasure.
And
I've
you know
enjoyed
what? I
this.
hope you come back again and we can get into more topics and discuss a little more and
Anytime, whatever you need.
maybe take some answers from people now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much.
David.
All right. Thanks, everybody.